Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hello everybody. Sorry about the delay. We had our meeting at the White House ran longer than expected. I wanted to brief you a little bit about the visit of the Deputy Crown Prince to the United States. This is His Royal Highness's first visit as Deputy Crown Prince and Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense to the United States. It's been a very busy week and a very productive week. His Royal Highness began his visit with a 2-hour meeting with Secretary Kerry at the Secretary's residence, which was then followed by an iftar dinner. The next day, His Royal Highness met with the Director of National Intelligence, Jim Clapper, and also visited the CIA, met with Director John Brennan. He also met with congressional leaders, including the Speaker of the House, the Chairman and Ranking Members of the key committees, Foreign Affairs, Armed Services, Intelligence. Again, very, very productive meetings on Capitol Hill. And then he met with the Economic Council, that also included the Secretaries of Commerce, Treasury, and Energy, as well as the U.S. Trade Representative. There were meetings also with executives, meetings with Saudi students. In fact, the meeting with the Saudi students is taking place as we speak. There were meetings with the Chamber of Commerce. His Royal Highness is accompanied by a large delegation that includes the Ministers of Finance, the Ministers of Energy, the Minister of Trade and Investment, the Minister of Culture and Information, the Foreign Minister, as well as officials, advisors in the Royal Court, who in turn have been meeting with their counterparts in the US. The objective of this visit is, as all visits of this nature, it is to reinforce the historic and strategic relationship between our two countries. It is to exchange views and ideas on issues of the day, on challenges that our two countries face in the region and in the world. It was also an opportunity for His Royal Highness to brief people about the Kingdom's Vision 2030 and where we see the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia moving over the next 15 years or so, which is a very bold vision and a very comprehensive vision. I think people in the US were very pleased with it and very supportive of it, the scope of it, the breadth of it, and look forward to working with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on its implementation. So that was it. In terms of regional issues, you can probably guess what they were. It was to do with Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Libya, Iran, terrorism, the bilateral relationship. I would describe the meetings as very, very positive. I believe there was a commonality in terms of positions and views, and an emphasis on the strategic relationship between the two countries and ways of further broadening, deepening, and strengthening it. So with that, I would want to stop here and see if you have any questions that you would like me to answer. I think I will first.
شكرا جزيلا سيد ناصر حسيني وطارق. واضح جدا انها زياره جد مكثفه ومليئه بالمستجدات. لدي سؤالين ان سمحتم فيما يخص ايران والموقف السعودي. هل نحن الان امام السعوديه التي ستتعايش مع السلوك الايراني في المنطقه ام التي ستواجه السلوك الايراني في المنطقه كما هي انتقالات حاليا؟ ثم في اليمن الامارات العربيه المتحده اعلنت الان ان الامر حسم وان الحرب انتهت. ماذا تقول السعوديه؟ شكرا جزيلا.
اولا فيما يتعلق بموقف المملكه تجاه ايران، موقف المملكه تجاه ايران ما في تغيير. المملكة العربية السعودية تنظر لإيران بأنها دولة تحاول تصدير ثورتها، دولة تتدخل في شؤون دول المنطقة، دولة تدعم الإرهاب، دولة تحاول أن تزعزع الأمن والاستقرار في دول المنطقة، وهذا أمر مرفوض من قبل المملكة العربية السعودية. إذا كانت إيران تريد أن يكون لها علاقات طبيعية مع دول المنطقة، فعليها أولا أن تتخلى عن مبدأ تصدير الثورة الذي موجود في الدستور الإيراني. ثانيا، يجب عليها أن تحترم مبادئ حسن الجوار وعدم التدخل في شؤون الآخرين. وثالثا يجب عليها أن لا تنظر لمواطنين دول المنطقة من ناحية طائفية أو من ناحية مذهبية. هذول المواطنين ينتمون لدولهم ولاءهم لدولهم وليس لإيران، وإيران لا علاقة لهم بهم. فإذا كانت إيران تعيش بموجب هذه المبادئ وتكف عن دعم الإرهاب والتدخل في شؤون دول المنطقة وتهريب السلاح وتهريب المخدرات، فما يوجد لا يوجد أي مانع من إقامة علاقات حسن جوار وعلاقات ودية بين إيران وبين دول المنطقة. ولكن هذا الأمر يعود لإيران، هي الدولة التي على مدى 35 سنة منذ ثورة الخميني وهي تنتهك سلوك عدواني تجاه دول المنطقة، وهي تشعل في الفتن الطائفية في المنطقة، وهي تدعم الإرهاب، وهي تغتال الدبلوماسيين، وهي تهرب السلاح، وهي تقيم ميليشيات وتجعل هذه الميليشيات تزعزع الأمن والاستقرار في المنطقة. فكل العمليات العدوانية أتت من جهة واحدة، من جهة إيران وليس من دول المنطقة. فإذا كانت إيران تريد أن يكون لها علاقات طبيعية مع دول المنطقة، فعليها أن تغير المنهج أو النهج الذي هي تبنته على مدى 35 سنة. فيما يتعلق باليمن، اليمن فيه كما تعلمون تقليص في العمليات العسكرية بحكم الاتفاقيات المتعلقة بالهدنة، وهذا شيء إيجابي. فيه مباحثات قائمة في الكويت الآن من قبل الأطراف اليمنية، والذي نأمل أن تؤدي لنتائج إيجابية بإذن الله. ونحن نعمل مع كل الجهات في اليمن ومع حلفائنا في دول التحالف ومع أصدقائنا في المجتمع الدولي من أجل إنجاح هذه العمليات، لكي نستطيع أن نبعد اليمن من الحرب والدمار إلى الأمن والاستقرار وإعادة البناء. أنا أعتقد أنه موقف الإمارات واضح جدا بالنسبة لنا. الإمارات دولة من أساسية فيما يتعلق بهذا التحالف. الإمارات شاركت وبقوة في هذا التحالف، سواء كان لدعم الشرعية أو لمواجهة الإرهاب. واعتقد أنه موقف ما ألاحظ أي تغير في موقف الإمارات. أعتقد أنه فيه بعض التقارير التي نشرت في الصحافة قد لا تكون دقيقة جدا. الإمارات ملتزمة بهذا التحالف، ونحن لا يوجد لدينا أدنى شك في التزام الإمارات وحرص الإمارات في دعم هذا التحالف لحين وصول اليمن إلى بحر الأمان.
جعفر الزعري سكاي نيوز عربية. فيما يخص الأزمة السورية ولقاء ولي العهد السعودي مع الرئيس باراك أوباما هذا الصباح، هناك ربما سوء تفاهم أو نظرة غير موحدة ما بين الرؤية السعودية لحل الأزمة وكذلك الأمريكية. كيف تم النقاش في هذا الموضوع، وهل رؤب الصدع؟ هذا فيما يخص الأزمة السورية. فيما يخص الاتفاقات سواء العسكرية أو الاقتصادية ورؤية المملكة 2030، ما هو حجم الاتفاقات ربما التي ستوقع خلال زيارة وزير الدفاع وولي العهد السعودي؟
أعتقد فيما يتعلق بسوريا موقف الولايات المتحدة وموقف المملكة العربية السعودية الفرق ما هو كبير جدا. كلنا ندعم حل سياسي مبني على إعلان جنيف 1 وقرار مجلس الأمن 2254. كلنا ندعم المعارضة السورية المعتدلة بالتعاون مع الدول الحليفة لنا، يعني لنا اللي هي المملكة والولايات المتحدة. كلنا لا نرى أي دور لبشار الأسد في مستقبل سوريا، وكلنا نسعى لأن نحافظ على مؤسسات الدولة في سوريا لكي لا تسودها الفوضى، ونحافظ على وحدة الأراضي السورية، ونبني دولة سورية جديدة يعيش فيها كل الطوائف والفصائل السورية بالمساواة. هذا ما نسعى إليه. فهناك بعض الأفكار فيما يتعلق بتكثيف الضغوط على بشار الأسد للتجاوب لمطالبات المجتمع الدولي فيما يتعلق بوقف إطلاق النار، وفيما يتعلق بإدخال المساعدات الإنسانية، وفيما يتعلق بالبدء في العملية الانتقالية السياسية الذي هو يماطل فيها. فما كان فيها، ما أعتقد أن هذا يعتبر خلاف. كلنا متفقين على الأمر هذا، وكان في تبادل آراء فيما يتعلق بما هي أفضل الوسائل لتكثيف الضغوط على بشار الأسد وعلى حلفائه للتجاوب للإرادات المجتمع الدولي. وأنا أود أن أكرر كما ذكرت مرارا وتكرارا، الكل يعلم كيف ستنتهي الأزمة السورية. ستنتهي الأزمة السورية بدون بشار الأسد، لا مكان له، هذا أمر محسوم. وكما ذكرت مرارا وتكرارا على بشار الأسد أن يذهب يرحل، أما عن طريق عملية سياسية وهذا ما يفضله الجميع، أو أن الشعب السوري سيبعده بالسلاح، لكن أمره محسوم، مسألة وقت. شكرا. Can I have one
الاتفاقيات الاقتصادية؟
هي الزيارة كانت التشاور والتنسيق وتبادل الآراء فيما يتعلق بالتحديات التي تواجه المنطقة، سواء لبنان، سوريا، العراق، إيران، اليمن، ليبيا، العلاقات الثنائية، مواجهة الإرهاب. كما أنها كانت فرصة لاطلاع الأصدقاء في الولايات المتحدة عن رؤية المملكة 2030. فهذه كانت أكثر من ناحية هذه من ما أنها توقيع اتفاقيات. تم توقيع اتفاقيات مع شركة داو في المملكة، وهي الآن أصبحت أول شركة تستطيع أن تسوق بضاعتها في المملكة العربية السعودية. فهذه خطوة إيجابية ومرتبطة برؤية 2030 والإصلاحات الاقتصادية التي ستتبناها المملكة. كما أن سمو ولي العهد سيذهب إلى سيليكون فالي ليجتمع بشركات التقنية لبحث كيف تستطيع المملكة أن تستفيد من هذه التقنية لتطوير الاقتصاد ولتطوير الإبداع في المملكة العربية السعودية. وبعد ذلك سيزور مدينة نيويورك للاجتماع بصناديق الاستثمار وبالبنوك الكبيرة للتشاور حول كيف نستطيع أن نتعاون في المستقبل القريب فيما يتعلق بالأسواق المالية والبنوك، وفيما يتعلق بشركات التأمين، وفيما يتعلق في طرح أسهم شركة أرامكو السعودية وإلى آخره. فالزيارة بعد ما انتهت. Could I have one in English?
Sorry, thank you.
Go ahead.
Very much for doing this today. A group of State Department employees who work on the Middle East have written a memo of dissent expressing frustration with administration policy in Syria, asking for a more active policy and one that includes possibly airstrikes on the Assad regime. I'm just wondering if this is something that Saudi Arabia would support and how you feel about current administration policy.
Yes.
Yes, you would support
Yes.
more active.
Yes.
Would you support?
We have been arguing from the beginning of the Syrian crisis that there should be more robust intervention in Syria, including airstrikes, a no-fly zone, a no-drive zone, a safe haven, more robust arming of the Syrian opposition, including surface-to-air missiles. We have been arguing for that from the beginning of the crisis, and we continue to believe that unless we change the balance of power on the ground in a dramatic way, that once we do that, it will open the way for a political settlement. But if the Bashar regime feels that it can continue in a stalemate, much less prevail, there will be no incentive for them to take the necessary steps to bring about a transition in Syria. So yes, we've always supported a more aggressive approach and a more robust approach, including a military approach to Syria. And we have said that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would be prepared to provide special forces to any international coalition that would operate in Syria. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, and welcome back to Washington.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. This is Ahmed from Sharq Al-Awsat newspaper. I would like to ask you, what's your views about a possible bill at the House and the Senate to stopping air-to-ground missile until Saudi Arabia promised to take precaution to limit civilian casualties in Yemen? What's your views about this bill? And was there any discussion regarding this bill between His Highness and the U.S. lawmaker?
Yes, I think I believe that the bill was drafted based on wrong assumptions. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is very, very keen on protecting civilian lives and minimizing civilian damage. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is very, very keen on upholding international humanitarian law. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been very careful, as well as the coalition, have been very, very careful about going after military targets. The air sorties that the Kingdom and the coalition fly are recorded, both video and voice. We conduct battle damage assessments afterwards, and we are confident that we have taken all necessary measures to prevent or to minimize collateral damage or damage to civilians. And so in that sense, this is the argument in the bill that, or in the draft of the bill, that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, they would not be provided with air-to-surface weapons unless they comply with international humanitarian law, unless they avoid casualties to civilians, we're doing all of this. So the premise of this, upon which the amendment was based, was incorrect. We have discussions with the Congress on a continuing basis through our embassy about these issues, and we point out to them where we think there may be something that is based on incorrect information, and we clarify it, and generally we work things out. So that's would be my position on this.
Was there any discussion about a possible arms sales between His Highness and Secretary Carter yesterday?
His Royal Highness met with the Secretary of Defense for more than 2 hours, including briefings about a number of issues that we are working on, whether it involves building the capabilities of our special forces, whether it involves maritime security, whether it involves cybersecurity, and other issues of mutual concern. Of course, when two secretaries of defense or two ministers of defense of two allied countries get together, of course they will talk about the defense requirements and how best to meet those defense requirements. And so that is inevitably part of any conversation that they have, including the one they had yesterday. But I will leave it at that and not get into the details. Karen?
Mr. Minister, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said this week at a campaign event that she believes that further action must be taken to prevent the flow of funds from individuals in Saudi Arabia to terrorist groups, and also cited what she said with the building of mosques and spreading of a religious doctrine that also contributed to terrorism. Could you comment on that and talk about whether it came up at all in the discussions, and is it something that concerns you for the future relations between Saudi Arabia and the United States in the event of
Yes.
the election? And secondarily, could you say if Royal Highness's conversation with Clapper, if there was any discussion of when the so-called 28 pages will be released?
Let me start with the 28 pages. I think this is an internal U.S. matter, not a Saudi matter. We asked that the 28 pages be released in 2002, when they were first classified. His Royal Highness Prince Saud Al Faisal, then Foreign Minister, came to Washington with a message from then Crown Prince Abdullah bin Abdulaziz to President Bush, and in the White House we said we would like the 28 pages released so that we can respond to any allegations against us, and so that we can punish any Saudis that may have been involved in this plot. But we cannot, because we don't think it's fair or just, respond to blank pages. So that has been our position. Now, when they get released and how they get released is really up to this is a decision for the U.S. government to make. Our position on this is very clear. We also understand that there was an investigations conducted into the allegations that are in the 28 pages, and that those investigations have revealed that these allegations are not correct and they don't hold, and that essentially there is no there. And I believe that if people looked at the 28 pages and looked at the results of the investigations, they will come to the conclusion that these allegations are unsubstantiated, unproven, and nobody should make a big deal out of them. So anyway, on the 28 pages, this is really an internal American matter, and the U.S. would have to decide when and how to release it. This is not something that really concerns the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. With regards to funding and more can be done to stop the flow of funding from individuals to extremist groups. Absolutely. All of us can do more, including the United States. The importance is to have credible information so that you can take actions against them. In the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we have one of the strictest laws when it comes to financing of extremism or terrorism in the world. Our charities cannot operate abroad except through the King Salman Center or the Saudi Red Crescent, which is a semi-government entity. Our charities cannot withdraw cash from their banks. Any money raised in Saudi Arabia has to be spent in Saudi Arabia. And these are fairly strict procedures that I don't believe other countries in the world, including the United States, have taken. We have designated entities that we believed supported terrorism, including the Al-Haramain Foundation more than about 10 or 12 years ago, including their branch in the United States. We have designated individuals. We have laws in Saudi Arabia that prohibit the raising of funds or the distribution of funds to extremist or terrorist groups. We have people in jail who were put on trial for doing so and then sentenced to doing this. So nobody can question the kingdom's commitment to fighting terrorism or fighting the financing of terrorism. At the end of the day, we are the main target of Al-Qaeda and Daesh because Saudi Arabia is the birthplace of Islam and it's home of the two holy mosques. We suffer terrorist attacks by these terrorist groups and have for the past 12 years. We have a large number of our citizens were killed. A large number of our security forces were killed in fighting the terrorists, and we continue to battle them. So we are under no illusion about what needs to be done. I think this idea of building mosques and spreading intolerance has become exaggerated. You cannot build a mosque unless you have the permission of the local government. And if a mosque is preaching intolerance, then take the preachers to task. That's what we do in Saudi Arabia. But to build a mosque because a community requested it, and to provide the brick and mortar, and then if later on it's taken over by extremists, that really should be the responsibility of the local government, not the donor who made the donation 30, 40 years ago. And so we work with people in this area. We have de-radicalization programs. We have campaigns to promote tolerance and to combat extremism, and we work with other countries to do so. And I think the charges that are leveled at Saudi Arabia are, one, not correct. I think they're exaggerated, and I think, frankly, they're not fair. We have done as much, if not more, than any other country in the world to fight terrorism, terror financing, and those who promote extremism and violence. And our record is very clear. Yes, sir.
In terms of future relations?
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's relationship with the U.S. is bipartisan. It started, the first meeting was between Democratic President and King Abdulaziz in 1945 at the Great Bitter Lake in Egypt. It has continued through Republican and Democratic administrations. And the one constant in this relationship is that with every decade, it grows stronger, broader, and deeper, irrespective of whether it's a Democrat in the White House or a Republican in the White House. We look at our relationship with the U.S. as a relationship with a very important ally, a relationship that is historic, a relationship that has provided great benefit to both countries, and a relationship that allows both of us to deal with the challenges of the region and of the world. So we don't take any issues in terms of who's president and who's not president. And Secretary Clinton has a tremendous experience. She knows the region. She's been to the region many times. She was Secretary of State. She was First Lady. So I expect that with any president in the White House, we will continue to enjoy very strong and very solid ties between the two countries. Yes, sir.
A few months ago, you had discussions with lawmakers about a bill that was going through Congress that would strip Saudi sovereign immunity in 9/11 lawsuits, and you said that if the bill passed and it was signed into law, that the kingdom might be forced to sell its U.S. assets. That bill's now since passed the Senate. It's going to be considered in the House. In your meetings this week, or the Deputy Crown Prince's meetings this week, did you discuss with members of the House the bill, and did you reiterate the warning about the absence?
Yeah, I think that warning was exaggerated in the way it was reported. We don't threaten our allies and we don't threaten our friends. I think the way it was, I know because I said it. The way it was put is that if you erode the principle of sovereign immunities, you reduce investor confidence in your economy, and you also open up yourself to lawsuits. And if you reduce investor confidence, it's not just Saudi Arabia, everybody will begin to think twice before they invest in a place where their assets could be seized. Now, we see this legislation, the JASTA legislation, as an American issue, not a Saudi issue. If the principle of sovereign immunities is eroded, the international system will revert to being governed by the law of the jungle. The country that has the most to lose if the principle of sovereign immunities is eroded is the United States, because you're the largest player in the world. You have forces all over the world. And if the principle is eroded in the US, courts in other countries could do the same thing, and they can file lawsuits against your officials, against your military, and you will not be able to assert sovereign immunity as a defense. I think a lot of countries in the world are worried about the erosion of the principle of sovereign immunity. So this is not a Saudi issue. This is really primarily an American issue, and also a global issue. And I believe and I hope that the Congress, that wisdom will prevail in the Congress, as it always does, and Congress will do what it did in past years on this matter for the sake of America, primarily, and for the sake of the rest of the world. And we know what is driving this, we know who's pushing it, and we know the motive. And I think the harm that can happen to the international system is very grave. And that's why we look at it this way. Now, I believe that most people who look at this know that this issue is one that can bring tremendous damage to the conduct of international relations, and as a consequence, I expect that Congress will be wise in how it deals with this matter.
Can you just elaborate a little bit on who is driving it, do you think, and their motives that we know?
I think you can figure it out yourself. Yes.
Did the President discuss with the Crown Prince the possibility of Saudi Arabia taking in Syrian refugees? And second part to that question is, did the President and the Crown Prince have any discussion about Donald Trump's proposal to ban Muslims from entering the United States?
I don't recall that either of those two issues were discussed. With regards to Syrian refugees, Saudi Arabia, since the beginning of the crisis, has taken in almost 2.4 million Syrians, of whom somewhere between 600,000 and 700,000 still remain in Saudi Arabia. Since over the past year and a half, Saudi Arabia has taken in almost 1 million Yemenis, of whom probably 700,000 or 800,000 still remain. None of them is in a refugee camp. None of them lives in a tent. The custodian of the two holy mosques, King Salman, decreed last summer that any Syrian who comes to Saudi Arabia, or any Yemeni who comes to Saudi Arabia, be immediately provided with a work permit so they can have legal status, they can get jobs, they have access to health care, and their children can go to schools. Because we don't have one person in a tent, and as a consequence, we have not registered them with UN organizations as refugees. We want them to lead an honorable life, and we want them to lead a decent life, not live in tents or in refugee camps. So we have taken in a lot of Syrian refugees and a lot of Yemeni refugees as guests, not as refugees. And they're free to stay in Saudi Arabia until the crisis is over and their homes are rebuilt and they can go back. But we are and we haven't announced this or made a big deal out of it because we're not doing it to get credit. We're doing it to help our brethren in both Syria and in Yemen. And this is in addition to the substantial financial assistance that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has provided to Syrian refugees in Yemen, in Lebanon and in Jordan.
Can you
Right.
speak to the second part of my question?
Which
about
is?
Donald Trump? Did they discuss Donald Trump's proposal to?
No. No, there was no discussion of it, yeah. Go ahead.
Back to the 28 pages for a second. Did the timing of when it was going to be possibly released come up at all? I couldn't tell from your answer.
No. It didn't come up because we didn't raise it. This is an internal American issue. It's up to the U.S. to decide whether to release the 28 pages or not, whether to declassify them, and it's up to the U.S. to decide when to declassify them. This is not really a Saudi issue. Our position on the declassification has been clear and consistent for the past 13 or 14 years.
And then in Yemen, the Emiratis said they were wrapping up their campaign there. Were there in your discussions in Washington with the president? Did
Yeah,
wrapping up the campaign come up?
Yes.
Or what's the status?
I'm sorry. I think I got the same question in Arabic. I should have translated at the time. I believe that the reports about what the Emiratis said or didn't say were not very accurate. The United Arab Emirates has been an integral member of the coalition to support legitimacy in Yemen. They have been very, very effective in terms of conducting operations with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They have been very supportive of this effort and continue to be. They continue to play a hugely important role, and we see them as our partners in this, like we do all the other coalition members. What we have seen in Yemen in the last 2 months is a substantial reduction in military operations by the coalition, because we want to move towards a political settlement. Where you see military operations is where there is a direct threat, or the threat involves ballistic missiles. But other than that, the military operations of the coalition have substantially subsided, and we're working to reach a political agreement between the Yemeni parties that will then launch a transition period that will then take Yemen to a new future, and we can then shift from military operations to reconstruction and economic development in Yemen. So that's where we are, and I have no doubt in that the United Arab Emirates and all the coalition members are completely committed to this. There is no daylight in how the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia sees the situation in Yemen, or any of our other allies, and in particular the United Arab Emirates. Yes.
Yesterday, in a speech given in Orlando, President Obama said we have to end discrimination and violence against our brothers and sisters who are in the LGBT community here at home and around the world, especially in countries where they are routinely persecuted. Was this a topic of conversation in any of the meetings?
No. Yes, sir.
Thank you for answering our questions today.
You're welcome.
What does the Saudi government know about Omar Mateen's visits to Saudi Arabia in 2011 and 2012? And when the FBI investigated him in 2013-2014, what did the Saudi Arabian government provide to the FBI about those visits? And has the Saudi Arabian government gone back since the shooting to look at those visits again?
Okay. He performed Umrah in 2011 and in 2012. We have 6 million people a year who perform Umrah. And there was nothing that I understand that was derogatory in terms of how he performed Umrah. I think that as the story kept on developing, as we hear, that his motivations may be different than what people initially thought they would be. And I would refer you to the FBI or others in terms of what they have on this issue. But what I personally have is that he performed Umrah twice, once in 2011, once in 2012. I believe he was there for 5, I don't know the days, I don't remember, maybe a week or so, along with 6 million other Muslims who perform Umrah every year, and that he came back to the US and that was it. I don't know that he was on any radar screen, but then I want to caution you that I have not checked. We have to check with our security people to find out if there's any more. And we have a security channel between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the US, where all of these issues go back and forth.
Has Saudi Arabia Security Service?
I don't know. I can't tell you, but I would caution you about jumping to conclusions, because I think the motivation for the attack seems to be different from what people thought it was in the beginning. Yes, sir. ما أسمع. إيه.
عندي استهدت الحين.
يا هلا.
ما أقدر أوقف عشان أكمل. هل هناك قلق سعودي من الانتخابات الأمريكية خصوصا أنه البعض منهم يستغل اسم السعودية خصوصا في حادثة أورلاندو الأخيرة إضافة إلى أنه يطلبون بالموارد المالية. هل هناك يعني ما يقلقكم ما بعد الانتخابات؟
في كل حملة انتخابات تقال أشياء قد لا يعنيها الشخص، أو تقال أشياء بسبب كسب الأصوات، هذا شيء طبيعي. بالنسبة للعلاقات السعودية الأمريكية لما ننظر لها على مدى 80 سنة اللي فاتت، في كل عقد هذه العلاقات تنمو وتقوى وتتوسع في كل المجالات، بغض النظر عن إذا ما كان الرئيس ديمقراطي أو جمهوري، وبغض النظر عن إذا ما كان الكونغرس مسيطر عليه من قبل الديمقراطيين أو الجمهوريين. فنتوقع أنه بإذن الله مثل ما حدث في الماضي سيحدث في المستقبل، أنه مع مرور كل عقد سنشاهد مزيد من النمو وفي هذه العلاقات الاستراتيجية في كل المجالات. Yes, please.
Thank you for taking our questions today, sir. Last night, the Pentagon informed us that Russian airplanes have been striking opposition groups in the south of Syria. Obviously, Russia is co-chair of the International Syria Support Group, a group that Saudi Arabia is a founder member of. Do you think it's still a useful mechanism, the ISSG? Do you think the cessation of hostilities, as it stands, is useful, or has it become fallen by the wayside?
What's the alternative?
Well, you suggested earlier, sir, it was airstrikes against the Assad regime.
Yes, but so you have that. I think the International Syria Support Group has been very useful in terms of bringing people around the table with different opinions. There's a core group within that group that is composed of the 10 countries that are very strong supporters of the moderate Syrian opposition, including by providing them with weapons. And then in the ISSG, we have different opinions, and I think it was helpful to have these meetings and to have discussions and to have understandings where people can reach an agreement. I think the Syria Support Group effort led to the UN Security Council Resolution 2254. I believe the efforts of the ISSG led to the adoption of a cessation of hostilities and the introduction or provision of humanitarian assistance. The cessation of hostilities was not perfect because the Assad regime and their allies violated it. The provision of humanitarian assistance has not been perfect because the Assad regime is dragging its feet when it comes to providing assistance to certain areas. And we have now a means through this ISSG to try to exert pressure on Assad supporters in order to do more to pressure the Assad regime into complying with the will of the international community. So I think it is a useful process. Could it have been more effective? I think yes, if there was a will to deploy force in Syria, yes. I think if there had been a will to provide more substantial military assistance to the Syrian opposition 5 years ago, yes, this could have been resolved, we believe. Others disagree with this assessment, and I think you have two valid opinions. But at the end of the day, we have a process that through which the international community is trying to put pressure to bear on Bashar al-Assad to comply with the will of the international community. And we also have a parallel track where support for the moderate opposition, including military support, is continuing. Maybe this will be my last one.
I actually have two short ones. You mentioned the legislation coming out of Congress that suggests limiting weapons transfers to the kingdom for the campaign in Yemen as being misguided. But this isn't just coming out of Congress.
I didn't say misguided.
I think you said it was based on...
I said based on information that is not correct. The motivation for it.
Anyhow, there's been similar suggestions coming out of the White House, including an effort to stop cluster munitions transfers, I believe last month. Were conversations from the White House saying they wanted to see more safeguards in terms of preventing civilian casualties in Yemen. And also, you said that the relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia tends to grow deeper and stronger each year with each administration. Are you confident that that would be the case under Donald Trump, even though he has said derogatory things about Muslims and threatened to ban them from entering the country?
On the first issue, we have the discussions with regards to Yemen. The U.S. commended Saudi Arabia and the coalition countries for the reduction in the military operations and for the support for the peace talks in Kuwait. I think so that's in terms of the bilateral discussions. I know that the United States and our other allies have been very supportive of the coalition in the war on Yemen, whether it's by providing intelligence or logistical support or resupply of defensive equipment. As I mentioned earlier, we do not target civilians. We are very careful about what targets we take out. We are dealing with an opponent who uses artillery to indiscriminately shell towns and villages. We are dealing with an opponent who mobilizes children and uses them in warfare. We are dealing with an opponent who lays siege on towns and villages and starves the inhabitants of those towns and villages. We are dealing with an opponent who has no problem stealing humanitarian assistance and using it for political purposes. That's what we're up against. So we're doing everything we can to support the legitimate government, which is now prevailing in Yemen, and we're doing everything we can to minimize civilian casualties, and we're doing everything we can to comply with international humanitarian law. And I think our friends and allies know this. With regards to the relationship between our two countries, yes, I believe they will grow stronger and they will grow deeper in all areas, irrespective of who's in the White House. Our relationship are not based on personal relations. Our relationship is based on interests. And the interests between our two countries run very, very deep, whether it has to do with security and stability in the Middle East, whether it has to do with international energy markets, whether it has to do with international financial markets, whether it has to do with countering terrorism and extremism, whether it has to do with working together on the environment, whether it has to do with putting together coalitions in the world in order for specific causes, whether it has to do with trade and investment. This relationship is very, very solid. And I believe anyone who looks at it objectively can only come to the conclusion that it doesn't matter who's in the White House. This relationship will go on and continue to flourish as it has over the past 8 decades. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you coming here. And once again, my apologies for running 10 minutes late, but our meeting at the White House ran half an hour over, so it affected my schedule. Thanks again, everyone. Thank you.